days, God created all things, the earth, animals, fish, the entire universe, and finally a man created to be like himself.
Not bad, not bad.
But God saw that the man was lonely, and so he created a woman to be his companion.
Not bad.
Everything was perfect. God had created the man and woman and they were in a relationship with him just as he planned until one day.
Hey, girlfriend.
Who, me?
No, I'm talking the other only woman on the planet. Yes, you.
Oh, well, what's up?
Well, I was wondering, you and that guy you hang out with seem to have it pretty good around here, but you never eat from this tree. What's up with that?
Well, God's given us just one rule, that we can't eat from this tree. He says that if we do, then we'll die.
Oh, please. For me, you want a piece of fruit? You won't die. You mean to tell me you've run up the whole planet and you're scared to eat from this tree?
Okay, I'm not scared.
I'm not a chicken.
So prove it.
What? So prove it.
No.
Hey Eve, what's going on here? Man, I'm starving. You got anything to eat around here?
They had broken the one rule that God had given and messed up a perfect relationship with a perfect God. They were then banished from the Garden of Eden. From then on, things didn't get much better. Man continued to get more and more evil, and that relationship that God once had with his people was long gone. So God decided to start over. He brought a huge flood on the earth, destroying everyone in the world, except for one man's family, which he shed into a boat with 2 of every animal.
They were just wishing they were dead from the smell.
The family was saved from the flood and got busy repopulating the earth.
Scene 2, the promise. Time passed, and even though God had shown with the flood that he meant business, most people ignored him and continued to sin. But a few people really tried to follow him. One such person was named
Abraham.
What's going on? Who's talking to me?
It's me, God.
I don't believe it. God is talking to me. What have I done that you wanted me?
You obeyed me, Abraham. And so I make a promise to you. I will give you more descendants than the stars in the sky. I will make a nation of people out of you, and they will be my people.
God, this is wonderful, but where am I going to put all the people? I got this one-bedroom apartment, and I
will give you a land of your own. You will defeat all those who live in this land if you trust and obey me. It will be a land flowing with milk and honey.
Wow.
Now go.
And so the promise was made, a promise that would show God's faithfulness time and again. Time passed, and Abraham and Sarah gave birth to a son. God came to Abraham and told him to sacrifice Isaac to him as a test. Abraham was just about to go through with it when an angel stopped him.
Abraham, stop!
You don't have to go through with it. God was just going to test your obedience to him.
Don't do that to me.
More time passed, and Isaac had kids of his own, 2 sons, Jacob and Esau. Jacob eventually had 12 sons of his own, one which named Joseph. Now the story of Joseph and his brothers is well known, so we can kind of fast forward through some of this. Jacob loved Joseph the most and gave him a special colored coat. The brothers hated Joseph and sold him into slavery. Joseph works for a guy named Potiphar, but gets thrown into prison when Potiphar's wife hits on him. Pharaoh was disturbed by some weird dreams and hears of a guy in prison who can interpret dreams. Joseph tells Pharaoh that his dreams mean there's a famine coming throughout Egypt, and in 7 years there will be no food. Pharaoh puts Joseph in charge of Egypt to stockpile food for the time of famine, saving Egypt. Joseph's whole family joins him in Egypt. During the famine, years pass, and Joseph's family gets larger and larger. This is where God's promise to Abraham begins to come true. Eventually, Joseph dies, but his family keeps getting larger and larger. A new Pharaoh comes into power, and this guy doesn't remember Joseph or like the fact that all these Israelites are in Egypt. He enslaves them all, but they keep on multiplying. Their numbers are up to about 2 million at this point. So, Pharaoh decides to put an end to the Israelites once and for all. He decrees that any Hebrew boys born during this time will be put to death. It is this time that Moses is born. Ta-da! There should be. There will be a little clap, so let them clap. Go ahead.
Scene 3, the Exodus. Or enter Moses. Exodus. Get it? Exit us.
Anyways, it's at this time that Moses is born.
Hi, I'm Moses. Okay, so here's the deal. I grew up as a prince. I killed him kind of accidentally on purpose, and out of fear I ran for my life to the land of Midian. Welcome to Midian, land of mystery and adventure. And best north and back this side of the Red Sea.
must be joking.
So here I am.
I will never release your people.
Tough luck, Pharaoh. God's going to bring his power against you.
And to make a long story short,
Too late.
he did.
Blood is an Nile.
Frogs, ribbit.
Lies.
Dead livestock. Pay you.
Boils.
Hey, choo, choo. Choo, 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 choo.
Locusts.
Darkness.
And finally, the death of every firstborn son in Egypt.
Israelites, if we put the blood of the perfect lamb on our doorpost's neck, God will prophesy over our house and the angel's death comes to our firstborn sons.
And God did.
Quiet in the house, please.
Moses, my son is dead. Take the people and go.
430 years of slavery over. You hear that, Israelites? We're free. Come on, follow me.
And everything was going great.
Following the leader, the leader, the leader.
For about the first 5 minutes.
Moses, why did you bring us this way? The Red Sea is blocking our escape. Pharaoh changed his mind and his army is chasing after us. I wish I was back in Egypt.
I wish I had never followed you.
I wish I was dead.
Enough whining.
And so God allowed Moses to part the Red Sea, leading the Israelites through on dry ground. But the Egyptians were destroyed as the water filled back in. Over that next year, many things happened. The Israelites wandered in the desert towards the Promised Land, and God gave them the 10 Commandments to obey,
Here they are.
which they immediately began disobeying.
Oi.
They complained that they were hungry.
We're hungry.
So God gave them manna, which fell from the sky. They complained that they were thirsty.
We're thirsty.
So God gave them water from a rock. They got sick of the manna.
We don't like the manna.
So God provided plants for them to eat.
Taste the chicken.
This is how it went for the year that it took to get to the promised land. The Israelites were disobedient and whiny, and God continued to forgive and provide until at last they arrived at the promised land.
Behold, Israelites, the promised land, flowing with milk and honey.
Excuse me, I'm a little lactose intolerant. Maybe we can have some soy?
No. Quiet now. I have sent spies to the land to come back and report and see what they find.
I'm back.
Well,
what did you find? There are many groups of people living there already. They are huge. They will make dangerous enemies.
Great, this is just great.
We never get anything we want.
I wish I was back in Egypt.
I wish I never followed you. I wish I was dead.
that is it. God has promised to give us this land, yet you still want to complain. He has promised to defeat the enemies with force, yet you still do not trust him. I have had enough of you. Meshugana.
So God, who had led the Israelites to the promised land, punished them. They were forced to wander the desert for the next 40 years. None of those that saw God's wonders in Egypt ever got to see the promised land,
Oh, man.
including Moses.
Oh man.
And to make a long story short,
Too late.
40 years passed.
Scene 4 and 5. Wandering in the desert, entering the promised land. Moses died, and God chose a new leader for the Israelites named Joshua, who led them well.
We don't want to judge anymore. What? Oh, that's the wrong one. Sorry.
Listen up, Israelites.
Alright, listen up, Israelites. Now, there are many people that still live in this land and they're going to try to keep us from moving out, moving in. As long as we continue to obey, God will defeat them. After I'm gone, we continue to obey him. Now that we own almost all of it, continue to defeat those that already live and remain in this land.
And so Joshua died. And to make a long story short,
Too late.
the Israelites ignored God's command to clear out all the other people living in Canaan.
Scene 6, the judges. The time of the judges was a tricky one for the Israelites. They refused to obey God, and because of this sin, more sin followed. Soon they were marrying people they shouldn't have been marrying and following false gods. They pretty much abandoned God, and God allowed them to be captured and Charge! But then they would get kind of comfy, forget about God, and God would allow them to be beaten by their enemies. They would cry out to God for help.
God, help us to defeat and capture by our enemies.
God would send a new judge to free them.
Woohoo!
And on it went like this.
Charge! Hooray! God, help us to defeat and capture by our enemies. Woohoo! Charge! Hooray! God, help us to defeat and capture by our enemies. Woohoo! Charge! Hooray!
Enough! Needless to say, they were caught in a terrible cycle of sin. You may wonder, and disobedience that continued for 325 years. You may wonder, where does it end?
Where does it end? Where does it end?
It ends with scene 7.
The king. The last judge during this time was a guy named Samuel. But when he retired, the Israelites started mourning.
We don't want a judge anymore.
Yeah, we want a king.
The Philistines have a king.
Why don't we have a king?
We never get what we want.
When they told this to Samuel, he was furious.
I am furious. Don't you people know what a king is going to be like? He will take your sons and your daughters, and they'll have to cook his meals. They'll have to feed him and take care of his horse. You'll be his slave practically.
Okay, blah, 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 yada, 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 whatever. Read our lips.
We want a king and we want it now.
So God gave them a king.
Woohoo!
He knew this would not solve everything, but he saw that they would have to learn that the hard way. During this time, there were many kings. First, King Saul. Saul was a pretty good king for a while, but then he slipped into sin and disobedience, and so God replaced him with defeat.
Bye-bye. Remember, bye-bye.
What? You heard me. Now David was a very good king, and during his rule, the Israelites finally seemed to be on track, following God. Don't get me wrong, David had his share of mess-ups, like the famous Bathsheba incident.
Really just to bring that up.
But overall, David had a great year. He set up the city of Jerusalem as the capital of Israel, and God promises David that his son will be the one to build the temple and that David's family will rule forever.
Yes.
So David died.
But it's not here.
David died.
Whatever.
And Solomon became king. Solomon was a great king who did build the temple. In the end,
Oh, man.
by disobeying God and worshiping other false gods, Solomon set up a chain reaction that led to Israel's ruin.
I did that all.
Yeah. After Solomon's death, a kind of civil war breaks out between the north and the south of Israel.
Northern Israel is the best. Southern is your second best. Go north!
Northern Israel, we don't want to hear it. You're the Israelites with the best spirit.
So go back north and shut your mouth. The coolest Jews come from the south. Go, Southern Israel! Woo!
Anyway, Israel was split as a result of Solomon's sin, just as God had warned. Both kingdoms, the north
Go north!
and the south,
Southern spirits rock! Woo!
were ruled by king after king after king. Almost all bad kings. Further and further from God, the nation of Israel grew until...
Hey, wait a minute.
Yes, Solomon?
What about God's promise to my family what about God's promise to my father that our family would rule forever? Those bad kings were from our family.
It's Jesus. Jesus is the king from our family who will rule forever.
Jesus?
I'm getting to it. Do you mind? You're supposed to be dead at this point.
Oh, sorry.
Where was I?
Further.
Thank you. Further and further from God, the nation of Israel grew until...
Scene 8, the exile, or... During the time of the kings, God had sent prophets to speak for him, warning people away from sin.
Please, folks, back away from the sin. There's nothing to see here. Back away from the sin. Back to your God, the God of your ancestors. I'm a trained professional. I know what I'm doing. Back to your obedient life, citizens.
But no dice. So God brought the ruin on Israel that he had promised Solomon he would. Northern Israel was captured and held off to Assyria. Southern Israel, now called Judah,
Southern spirits rock! Woo!
Judah was attacked by a country called Babylon. They too were captured and hauled to Babylon as slaves and servants. During this time, lots of interesting stuff happened.
In the news today, a man named Isaiah announced that there's a day coming soon God will send us a deliverer. Man, I quote, he'll be called Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace, unquote, the long story, please George 5.
Apparently, 3 young men, Shadrach, Meshach, and a bubblegum, were thrown into a fiery furnace today and lived. More on that later.
2,000 Jews returned to the city of Jerusalem after being held captive for over 70 years. A man by the name of Nehemiah has rallied these Jews to rebuild the wall surrounding Jerusalem. I'm Steve Green, Channel 6 News, Jerusalem.
And so it went. Time passed, and to make a long story short, Nehemiah became governor and led the people in an amazing thing.
My friends, the wall of Jerusalem has now been rebuilt. The time has come for God to rebuild his people. We have returned to the promised land, the land that God has promised Abraham. The time has come now for us to return to God and living life his way.
And in a way, this happened. The people recommitted themselves to God. They didn't get it perfect, but it was closer than they had been for a long time.
Many years passed, 400 to be exact. Not much of what happened in this time is recorded.
It was about this time that Rome came in and took over Jerusalem, and they put a Roman king in place and he ruled. This king's name was Herod.
Not much else happened during this time. The Jews went on with their lives, obeying God as best they could, but never knowing what it was like to be in that perfect relationship with him that he designed in the beginning.
Until one silent night.
The cry of a newborn baby was heard from the depths of a filthy stable.
But that is the rest of the story. After all, a good writer always leaves room for a sequel.
17